To be honest, I think those of us that are drivers, we have to realize that every season is not meant to hustle and grind and grit it out, that sometimes more comes from stepping back and slowing down. And some seasons are meant for healing, which means we really have to slow down, which is
Yes.
hard to go through
Yes.
something painful, but then also have to remove so much from your life because you've got to heal. But man, does that catapult you forward in every area. But yeah, that's slowing down. That is more challenging for me to do. Good morning, women of Fort Mill. I am Leah Williams, and I am joined by the one and only Kelly Hoover. And we are really excited to talk about a topic that really resonates with both of us, and we know it will connect with you as well. It's on seasons of growth. When should we pivot? When should we pause? And when should we really push through? So, Kelly, how are you this morning?
I am doing wonderful. So excited about this topic because I feel like we both have done really probably great and probably pretty poorly and live in this. Do we pivot? Do we pause? Do we push? Probably on a regular basis. So I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Yes. And knowing the support that we need through all of those seasons, through growing in life and businesses, being a mom, all of those things. To be honest, I think those of us that are drivers, we have to realize that every season is not meant to hustle and grind and grit it out, that sometimes more comes from stepping back and slowing down. And some seasons are meant for healing, which means we really have to slow down, which is
Yes.
hard to go through
Yes.
something painful, but then also have to remove so much from your life because you've got to heal. But man, does that catapult you forward in every area. But yeah, that's slowing down. That is more challenging for me to do.
Absolutely. Well, I think we both are drivers. We're both have an incredibly high work ethic. We're both driven to serve, and within our careers and our businesses, we have opportunities to do that. And so it is kind of difficult sometimes to take your foot off the gas, right? But I think one of the things that we'll talk about today through our conversation is learning how to recognize which season you're in. And it can really make all the difference, and being intentional without feeling guilty, and different seasons of your life, and kind of recognizing like, where am I now and what needs to happen to make and recognize that next season and being able to do it. So, Leah, I know you've experienced tremendous amounts of growth. You've also had grief during the growth. You've had rebuilding. You've had a ton of just incredible things happen, but also challenging things. So, first question for you is, how do you recognize when it's your specific time to pivot instead of push and throw the gas on as hard as you can? Like, how do you know when it's good for Leah to pivot instead of push?
Sometimes I don't know immediately, but I think the more we connect with ourselves, the more we're in tune with ourselves and our body, the faster we can pick up on whether it is a season of pushing, pausing, slowing down, healing. Recently, for me, it's been a season of more pausing and pivoting because, and what's so cool about it is that is where more good has come from, is the slowing down, which is such a mind-boggling thing for me because I have ingrained into me, you have to be gritty, you have to hustle. And while anything good does require work, and anybody that has any level of success, it didn't just, you weren't sitting on your couch for 15 years and then boom, you became a CEO. There's a lot that came before that. But the season prior to slowing down is usually a hustle and a grind and you know what, I'm putting in extra effort. I'm staying up later. I'm getting up earlier. But for me, I think one of the things that helped me realize that, okay, you need to go back to healing. You need to go back to slowing down and reassessing the things that you have in your life was going through grief in first going into second quarter of 2025. And from that, pivoting to refocus on priorities, it told me what I still had remaining in my life that I had swept under the rug that I needed to pull back out and address. And from doing that, oh my gosh, Kelly, like so much good has come from that. It's easy when you're on the other side to be like, yeah, slow down and, so much good will come. But I will tell you, coming from someone that it is very hard to do that, to see what's on the other side of pivoting and changing directions and slowing down, more good in my personal and business life has come from that than anything else. So hopefully all of the other women like us that are big drivers, that is an encouragement too. What about for you as you have still continued to acquire more businesses, build and have your teams, really propel into tiers that you maybe never thought that they would so quickly. I mean, your growth is it just continues. But when have you felt like when you decided to pull back intentionally and slow down, did that lead to a breakthrough for you? What did you find in that season of pulling back a little bit?
I think probably the biggest breakthrough with pivoting and then forcing yourself to kind of pause. And sometimes I shouldn't even say it's like a force. Sometimes it is intentional and sometimes it's unintentional, right? Sometimes you're in a business, things slow down, your drive goes a different way, the market shifts, whatever it could be. But there's sometimes a pause that happens, and it could be a planned pause or it could be an unplanned pause. And I think that there's always lessons to be learned in that. And so I would definitely say during, probably my most recent sort of pause, it was probably one that was definitely needed, but was definitely not planned. And I think during that time, I really think about refocus and like refinement, because I think when you start down a journey, specifically in seasons of growth, whether it's you in your personal life and maybe a marriage or a relationship, or it's, for this example, it was in a business, what you are and who you are when you start down that path is not who you are years later, or things have changed and your ideas have changed, or things have progressed, or you have grown. And I think sometimes that does require a pause. And during the pause for me within business, I think it allowed me to refocus and refine what I wanted and how I didn't want things to be a certain way, but I did want to tweak and to change some things. And so I think of those things as like refocusing. I think during a pause, it gives you the opportunity. And the biggest lesson I learned is, how do I refocus to only shift and become refined and be better at whatever it is that I wanted? And for me, it was really truly being able to serve women in their health and becoming better versions of themselves. And so how do I refocus that mission? How do I bring that mission up to date? How do I truly take a pause and sit in what is sometimes very uncomfortable land, right? When you're in that pause, it can be uncomfortable, especially when you haven't planned it. And so that is definitely a lesson. And when you come out of it and you look back and you're in that, maybe that push phase, and you're like, wow, I really learned so much. And now I know, because of where I sat, and I sat still and I sat in that pause and I learned, now I have the energy and I have the willpower, and it's easy for me to push because I am realigned. I am refocused. And so I would encourage women, if you feel like you're in a pause right now, and whether you have chosen to be there or it has happened for you, then I encourage you to lean in and say, like, what can I take away from this? How can I be uncomfortably comfortable? Get real, get raw with the things that you're dealing with, and you'll have a breakthrough. It absolutely will be. It may not be as fast as you want. It may not be exactly the direction that you want, but I really do believe when you can sit in that and you can learn and you can continue to improve yourself and refocus, whatever it is, you will have a breakthrough on the other side. And most people who are even thinking about this topic, they are overachievers. They are people who are used to the grind. They are people who are used to pushing and, let me pivot, let me push, let me do this. But there's never any intentional slowdown. There's never any pause. And I will say, another thing I will bring up is having an intentional pause in your business and your everyday life. And a lot of times we in our everyday life use that as vacation. We use it as downtime. You've heard me call it white space on my calendar every weekend. But I think having an intentional pause is good. I know for me recently, in this last build, in this most recent business of mine, there was an intentional pause, and there was intentional saying, at this date, these actions will slow down and these things will change. And even though my mind and my heart wants to be in the push, I know I'm living in a pause in this very moment, and it will be followed by a pivot. And that is good. It is healthy because it creates the ability to not have burnout long term. So I really think that you really have to sit with things and refocus, refine, and that breakthrough will happen. And so I know, Leah, you have navigated through a lot of different seasons, right? You're constantly pouring into other, clients. You pour into women, you pour into your family. How do you navigate the seasons where you feel like you're pouring into others, but like you need to be poured into? And regardless regardless of whether you're in that push or that pivot or that pause, like how do you navigate that? You're not being poured into, you're pouring into others. Like how do you navigate those seasons for you, whether it's your personal life or your business? How does that work for you?
Well, kind of going back to what you said about pausing, sometimes I think it's easy for us to keep running because that's what we know and that's what's comfortable. And to others, it might be like, oh man, you're working so hard. Like you're always on the grind and hustling. That's our comfort space. And change, as we all know, is sometimes hard and it's not fun. So the slowdown and creating clarity can feel painful. And I think sometimes that's why, at least I personally, might not go to slowing down first because we like what we know and it's comfortable. In business, thinking about pouring into others and all the cliche things are normally right. Can't pour from an empty cup. We all have heard that, but embracing it, that is challenging. But one realization that has happened is sometimes I think it's easy to look to others to fill the things in us that we need to be filling for ourselves. And then it creates unrealistic expectations, whether that's with a spouse or other people or friends. So I think in pouring into others, it has forced me to realize, okay, if I don't have anything to give, what am I in control of that I can be doing for myself to fill me up instead of, oh, well, if my spouse did this, if he knew my love languages, or, if all of these other people that, and they may be valid or true, but going back to what you've said before, what was in your control and focusing on that, what that has made me and really forced me to realize is I am not doing the things that I can do on my own to fill me up on a daily basis. And those things mean I have to slow down. And this was even a previous episode. Slow down to, I think Nicole and I talked about it a little bit, is the slowdown and the reassessing. I love that word used, refining, allows us to have so much more to pour into others. But I think it tells us immediately, what are we not doing for ourselves? And sometimes that changes everything. Sometimes that is the lesson that we were supposed to learn in slowing down is I can give this to myself. I
100%.
can spend time recentering myself and protecting my energy. So yeah, that has been a big light
That's
bulb
right.
for Leah. Like you fill your own cup up some days, okay? And you just have to create the space to do it. Yeah, because it is, gosh, it goes back to that, an easy place, I think, for women, especially to go to, at least for me, which is, oh, I'm doing so much. I'm doing so much. Why you immediately think, why aren't others doing something for me when you aren't even doing what we need to for ourselves? What would you say for whether you're a mom or really just a woman in any season of your life feeling like you're behind, that maybe you have not spent the years or the time, or I talk to a lot of women where maybe they chose to stay at home to raise their children and they are now thinking, okay, well, now I am going to go back into the workforce or I am going to start a business, but I feel so behind. I feel inadequate. What would you share with them in that feeling and realizing that all the times that they, those seasons of life, what did they learn from slowing down that has better equipped them to jump into something that are they really behind? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we all make sacrifices. And whether people are staying at home and raising their children, that is obviously a very full time job, a very
Mhm.
important job. And the sacrifices, hey, yeah, you are sacrificing your, ability to work, maybe your ability to contribute to retirement. But on the flip side, if you are working, you're sacrificing time with your kids and missing out on things. So I really believe that either way, people can feel very far behind, whether it is missing out on those moments or maybe missing out on retirement funds, right? But I think
Yeah.
leaning into your own experience and learning that that was a season of pause or push, or maybe you were pivoting and you're not behind, you are exactly where you should be. And that is your story. And all of our stories are incredibly different. And it's a slower season, right? There are certain times, and you can take those experiences and you can now lean into them because had you gone in that specific example where maybe you are at home with your children and then you're going into the workforce, like had you flipped, you wouldn't be the same person that you're showing up today. You wouldn't have the same skill set. Now you come with
Right.
maturity and life experiences and a different story to tell, and it's a different season. And so I don't think anyone ever should to be behind. I mean, it is, we really should not live in the comparison zone. You can catch up and you can, do whatever it is and create those new moments and those new memories. And I think the biggest thing is when we think about this, we think about the different seasons of growth, whether it's in our personal life, it's in our business, like every season serves a purpose. They're all going to be, maybe a little messy, maybe a little unclear. They're going to be a little undecided. Some are going to be quiet. Some are going to be loud. You're going to feel like I can't keep up. I know for a lot of us, we talk about that busy cycle of to-do list. And I know, Leah, you and I both have way more things on our to-want list. It's not always a to-do, but it's a to-want list than we ever have time in the day. I'm like, I never, ever even get through anything in my quote unquote to-do list. Like, that's the one thing I can guarantee you is that I'll never get it all done because there's always the want for more and the desire for more than there's ever really time. But then there are those people who are like, I'm in that pause. I'm in that quieter season where I don't want to put that pressure on myself. I can't live in that push. And we're all in those different seasons and they're all accepted. And a lot of it has to do with our personalities. I love that you said, type A's, like those people, and you and I are those people that we are very comfortable in the grind. We're very comfortable with being busy. But I think that there's different seasons for even that. And the push can be a push in business, but then it can be a pause in business, but it can be a push in personal, and it can be a push in, spending time with our children or helping our child through this season. And so I think when we talk about pivot, push, and pausing, we can be in a push for family life and a pause in our business life. And that is accepted. Yes. And I think we have to honor those seasons that we're in and we have to grow into them. And we have to always realize that we need all three or we will burn out. Yeah. We will get sick of our family. We will get sick of our job. We will become resentful for something. And so being able to have those seasons is very important.
Yeah. And realize that we can't rush through life because we get one. And I know there's different thoughts on that too. Do we come back? Do we, depending on how many lessons we need to learn? But instead of just rushing to the end goal, because the end goal is what makes us feel like, yes, I checked the box. I got the promotion or I'm at this new level. But once again, the cliche things, it is the process. The process is our life. And a lot of us, I think, we're rushing it. And then we talk to the people that are in their latter 60s and 70s. And the thing we always hear them say is, don't rush those years with your kids. Your kid gets sick, enjoy holding them. You had to cancel that meeting because your child was sick. Who cares? And those are the reminders that I think we all need because the process is our life. The journey. I mean, that's why we're here.
It is absolutely true, and enjoy every single season because it goes so fast, especially when we see our children. You think back 10 years ago, Calvin, you weren't even thinking about Calvin. My girls were babies, and going into, toddlers and going into elementary school. And then I think now in 1 year, my first child will be going to college. We'll be preparing to send her to college. And it just literally happens at a blink of an eye. So really, truly enjoying it. And I love today's episode because I truly believe that every woman can relate to those different seasons and being impatient sometimes or being frustrated or really not knowing how to identify what they're in. And so if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to share it. I know there is a woman that needs to hear more about understanding what season they're in. Are they in a season of quiet and of pause and of refocus? Are they in that season of pushing and going after their goals and whatever that is? Or maybe they're in that season of really, truly pivoting. And we're so grateful you spent time with us today. And please share this episode with someone that needs to hear it. We would love for you to communicate and connect with us on Instagram. You can find us at Women of Fort Mill Podcast and share this episode. Give us a comment. Let us know what you want to hear on the next episodes. And of course, tag someone that would love to hear this as well. Leah, thank you for the conversation today. And I'm really looking forward to the next episode of Women of Fort Mill Podcast.